All right, good morning. This is Gavin McDaniel. I'm going to talk a little bit about the changes to the MOT standards, the 600 series. One of the general changes that we've had throughout the 600 series is that we've removed the warning lights and flags from all the work zone signs and removed the warning lights from all the channelizing devices. There was a study done in 2013 by Texas Transportation Institute that showed that the value of having the lights and flags on the MOT devices was not there. We were one of 2 states in the country that still used warning lights on our devices. So there are some other changes that went along with it. We stopped using the Type C steady burn lights on barriers a couple seasons ago, and now as of January 2016, you will not expect to see anything on new contracts let after January 16. For barriers and longitudinal channelizing devices, instead of the Type C steady burn lights, we're going to be using barrier delineators. This is because we'd like to have that reflectivity. In any case, with the channelizing devices, you have the reflective sheeting on those, and with longitudinal devices and barriers and such, you'd have to have some reflective sheeting perpendicular to the vehicles traveling where the light would reflect back. So these are used in lieu of the lights. In Index 600, we've modified the sheet that displays the drop-off conditions. There was some challenges that we had seen on some design build projects where there was a certain interpretation of the requirements, and we had some issues that we had to clarify. So for one thing, we have removed the shoulder treatment detail and addressed that in note 3 of this sheet. Also, we have added the requirement that the algebraic difference in the slopes is not greater than 0.25. So a drop-off is defined as a drop in elevation is greater than 3 inches with slopes steeper than 1 to 4 and an algebraic difference in slopes greater than 0.25. So we added this portion to the note. Just to get a sense of what we're talking about, here's an example, and it's not to scale, however, but it's just a representative example of a drop-off condition where you'd have 1 to 4 slopes outside where you'd have a typical section during an MOT phase of a cross slope of 2%, and you do have a drop-off and you want to mitigate it with a 1 to 4 slope. Well, when you have that algebraic difference there, that theta value of less than 0.25, we're okay. However, when you're on a super elevated section, that 1 to 4 slope creates an angle difference there that would be seen to a vehicle as a drop-off. So this is what we're talking about, mainly to handle the super elevated sections. Index 603 was reorganized. A while ago, we took away the temporary raised rumble strips from Index 600 and merged them with 603. And there was some, I guess, a little bit of, people had a little bit of trouble of understanding what the requirements exactly were. So we wanted to reorganize the index, clarify it. We took this general layout that you see at the bottom of the page and placed that on the front sheet. We also took some other indexes like Index 635, which dealt with conditions where you are in proximity of a railroad crossing, and deleted it. A lot of the information in that index was exactly the same as Index 603 with some minor details. So we merged that information. We also have a new policy for edge line and center line rumble striping. And the center line rumble striping requires that the machine that's grinding the rumble strips at the center line, that machine kind of overhangs the center line a couple feet in some cases. And it varies depending on what machine is used by the contractor. However, we needed a standard solution to handle this, and so we also added a special condition where the work encroaches the center line. So taking a look at the first sheet, we've actually got now a general layout. This is a general layout where your low speed condition, nothing special is going on, no railroad tracks, no AFADs, nothing special. This is your general layout that you're going to see 90% of the time. And you also pay attention to the general notes here on this sheet, because the general notes tell you where there are special conditions and what other things need to be done. Going to sheet 2, we see the temporary raised rumble strips, and you can see it's laid out to where it could be spliced into that general layout. If you look here where the cut lines are, it says continue layout to the work area. So you just place the siding and temporary rumble strip set spacing into that general layout. Same here with the railroad crossing buffer space extension and the temporary lane shift. We'll go into those a little deeper here in a second. So you can see these are the notes from sheet 1. I kind of clipped everything together here, but it gives you the clear requirements of when the temporary raised rumble strips are required. And then basically this is all the information that was different from Index 603 on 635. So we've created this special condition. We've placed the notes on the requirements of when it's required on sheet 1 in note 8. And here is the special condition where the work encroaches the center line. And I just want to talk about this just for a little bit. So one of the things is, one of the requirements to be able to utilize this is that there is an existing shoulder. So this is very important, that this is the edge of existing paved shoulder, edge of existing travel lane. So the intention is not for the contractor to create a temporary shoulder and use temporary pavement. If you're going to do that, you're going to have special plans. It's going to be additional cost on the project. If there are no shoulders when you're doing centerline rumble striping on a project, you can consider doing other alternatives, such as profile thermoplastic, because there's a very few conditions. Our policy is to have shoulders, but there are still a few roadways out there that don't have shoulders, and you're not planning on placing a shoulder, or they don't have a shoulder for particular reasons. Those are project-specific conditions. Okay, so this gives the contractor the direction of how to work just over the center line when we do have shoulders in place. Okay, sheet 3 of Index 603. This is where the AFAD information resides, and nothing about the AFAD information has really changed. All right, Index 607, we added option 2. Before there were no options. However, option 1 is exactly what the requirements were previously. Option 2 is provided at the request of the materials office. The materials office has a process with testing asphalt pavement, and their workers come out between the shadow vehicle and the work vehicle in this area here. And the issue is that the old requirement is that the spacing between the shadow vehicle and the work vehicle was too large, and they had an issue with vehicles coming around the shadow vehicle and penetrating the work area where their workers were, and it was a danger and hazard to the workers. So we allow this option 2 to have tighter spacing, and it allows the drivers of the shadow vehicle to meet the MUTCD requirements and our requirements by getting closer. In this case, there are requirements. There are additional requirements for the advanced warning vehicle. Okay, so this is the reason behind it. There are some the similar thing happened to 619. So option 1 was what was previously required. Option 2 is the new allowance and new requirements. And this was all requested by the State Materials Office. Index 660 was revised. We revised this to be more in line with the MUTCD typical applications. We also clarified some requirements on how to properly utilize pedestrian LCDs. And we, in this particular detail, we also removed the temporary mid-block crossings. These are, in order to use a mid-block crossing, temporary mid-block crossing, there has to be proper justification. It can still be used. However, it has to be properly justified in a project-specific plan detail in order for it to be used. Okay, so so you can still use it, but these are simple examples of MOT schemes. If your project does not fit it, you are required to have project-specific details. Now, with the availability of our DGN files online, it will be simple for you to grab the detail from that DGN, place it in your plans, and modify it as needed. So just a couple things here to point out. We added these road work ahead signs. You might wonder, why did you add that? Because that's what the MUTCD typical application is. That's the minimum required standard. We also modified and utilized the detour signs that are available. And we also changed the legend for the pedestrian channelizing devices. They used to be little squares similar to the longitudinal channelizing devices, and at some points it was very difficult to determine if it was a channelizing device or a LCD, pedestrian LCD. All right, this is another one of the details, and you'll notice that we also, on all these details, we changed the title of these details because the title of these details are now more in line with the MUTCD. In this particular detail, we used the pedestrian longitudinal channelizing devices, and we clarified the detour information again. And we also, instead of having a 200-foot taper specified here, it depends on the width of that area, and this is actually shown in a parking area, a street parking area right here. And so that is just a 20-to-1 taper. So we just gave the ratio there of that taper instead of a length. Pretty much very similar things on the sidewalk diversion detail. Just clarified that and utilized the pedestrian channelizing devices. Notice that these are all pedestrian channelizing devices in this detail because this is actually where the pedestrians will be walking around the work zone and diverted around the work zone. We have a new team member in the roadway design standards section. The maintenance of traffic engineer, Daniel Strickland. He is actually at a meeting down south right now, and I wasn't going to throw him to the wolves and have him present this yet. He just started about a month ago. Daniel will be the contact person for all things MOT, and we're looking forward to the great things ahead. There is going to be a transition, like I said, and I mentioned kind of earlier, we're pulling everything more in line to be more consistent with the MUTCD because that is the minimum standard, and our design standards actually go over and above what the requirements of the MUTCD are. So it makes sense to be more consistent with the terminology and the requirements that the MUTCD uses. So you'll see a transition in the naming over the next couple of years from maintenance of traffic to temporary traffic control. They are one and the same, but you will see a transition. Keep a lookout for changes coming to the requirements. And a couple of things I want to point out that are coming soon is there is a new statewide lane closure procedure that's being developed right now. It's in the standard procedure development process, So the new statewide lane closure procedure will specify how to enter the data and how to do the lane closure analysis, and it'll kind of work with Chapter 10 of the Plans Preparation Manual. So keep an eye out for that. Also, there is a new temporary traffic control training handbook that is in draft form right now, and it clarifies the training requirements for the maintenance of traffic training. It is you can get a glimpse of it, of the draft, if you look at the proposed changes to specification section 105. There is a link to the draft in there. So we needed to have that link available so when you're reviewing the specification changes, you can actually follow through and see the whole package. So the expectation is that the implementation of the temporary traffic control training handbook will be January 2016. All right, let's look at questions. One of the questions is, will the barrel man be one of those changes? That's funny. No, I just thought that was funny. One of the things is that, you know, it might seem like a great idea to have something that stands out on your project to make people aware of coming work zone, but one of the more important things is consistency and what the drivers see. So although this might look like a great idea, it's not so much a great idea. If drivers are always looking for the barrel man and they don't see one on another project, it might create some issues. So that's one of the reasons why I had that up there. All right, rumble striping is a fast-moving operation and will be difficult keeping up with cones as per your new standard. Can the contractor eliminate the use of cones and substitute a pilot vehicle? Yeah, we have been discussing the uses of pilot vehicles. There's certainly a possibility to do project-specific designs for your maintenance of traffic scheme. This is just one alternative. I think that the machine moves at about 2 to 3 miles per hour. Is that right, Chester?
10 miles a day. So
10 miles a day?
Yeah.
So the Chester Henson is very knowledgeable about the actual grinding process. So if you have any questions about that, contact Chester, and he'll be up speaking next, so you'll get his contact information. Let's see, let me just show Daniel Strickland's information again. New standards start. There's a couple questions we're not clear on, but if you have any additional questions, just contact me or Daniel. There is a question about the procedure timeline. I'm not sure about that because it's in the formal process right now. So you can contact Chris Lewis of the State Construction Office, who is actually spearheading that revision. As soon as they get it, it will be owned by the Railway Design Office. And there's another question about the handbook. Also, will the new TTC handbook be required for MOT recertification? The TTC training handbook is just a clarification of the requirements for training. So let me just talk about that for a second. In the past, we've had a procedure that has been 14 pages long and has a lot of redundant information, and it was not the easiest thing in the world to follow. So what we've done is we've kind of taken the content of that and we've condensed it and clarified a few things and reduced it to about an 8-page document that shows the clear requirements for training. So instead of having all the requirements within the procedure, we have it in a separate document that is referenced from the 1-page procedure now, because the 1-page procedure, you can actually see that procedure on the website as well. When you go and click on, if you go to the standard specifications change and click on that link in that section 105, you can see the draft procedure over there as well, and that's going through the formal procedure process. Okay, so the procedure, the existing procedure, will be replaced. It will be one page, simple, and it will have a link to the training handbook. And that training handbook has all the requirements for the training. So you'll get a reference from the procedure and the specifications to that one location that has all the information on how to get trained, what levels of training are required for what personnel, all in that one location. Let's see. I think, see, John, let's see, we were just playing how the grade difference for shoulder drop-off is measured. I think, if I'm understanding John's question, he has a question about how the grade difference is measured, and it is, it's measured by the difference between the, yeah, it's just an algebraic difference between the grades. So, if you have any more questions, let's see. Okay, John Fowler has another question. We get a lot of questions with MOT, and that's good. Will profile thermo be an acceptable substitute for ground-in stripes when necessary, based on the engineer's judgment? Current procedure requires a design variation signed by the central office. Yeah, there's some changes in the Chapter 7 requirements that are going to be coming with that. This is all part of the discussion we've been having with the roadways without shoulders. In some cases, it might be necessary to go ahead and use the profile thermoplastic if your MOT scheme cannot be accommodated for a 2-lane roadway. And there's also, we do use the raised thermoplastic, profile thermoplastic, excuse me, for concrete pavements as well. So we're going to clarify that in the coming PPM that's released in January 2016.